Hi, thanks for joining me. I'm Julie. This is Stamp with Julie Baum. Today I am showing some tips and tricks that will quite possibly make your stamping experience a little bit easier and or enjoyable. Now, when I was getting prepared to film this, I was really thinking about demonstrators that are on my team and some things that might help them. So these are geared with demonstrators in mind, but it won't hurt at all for you to be watching and to learn these tips and tricks as well. So I've got a couple things to show you. The first thing has to do with cutting apart some of our supplies. And this is super helpful to a demonstrator, especially if you are teaching classes or running stamp clubs or stamp camp, and you need to make the most out of your materials and supplies. So we have the grid paper that's available to everyone, demonstrators and customers alike. And what I have gotten used to doing is taking my full piece of grid paper and cutting it either into halves or even down into fourths. What I have watched happen during classes or clubs is I've got my customers sitting with a piece of grid paper beneath them like their little placemat. And then as they're stamping, and when they want to stamp off or they want to stamp an image to test it, they're stamping, if they're right-handed, they're stamping over here and testing it. Or if they're left-handed, they're stamping over here. And the rest of the grid paper is completely clean. So at the end of the class, you have these 11 by 17 sheets of grid paper with only a bunch of ink in one area, and the rest is relatively clean. And if you're like me, I really like tidy stamping, so I don't like reusing the grid papers for class if they have ink all over them. So by cutting them down ahead of time, you can provide each of your customers with a piece of grid paper, which is still good for measuring, still good for stamping off or testing their image. And should they need to flip it, or need a second one, chances are they're still only going to use a half sheet at the most. So that has become very helpful and quite money saving as well. The next thing that I do is I have taken my Simply Chamois and I have cut mine into two pieces. So if I'm just stamping at home on my desk, I will still usually leave both of them in there. I have a nice large cleaning surface. I can easily pick up half if I'm cleaning my stamp this way. But what you get by cutting your chamois in half is now for a class, you can put a half a chamois into each empty case, setting these out onto your tabletop. And now you only need a half a chamois, perhaps between every 2 or 3 customers or students. So this is expanding your chamois twice as many uses as you could have if you left them full size. All right, another thing I wanted to show you is my little metal ruler. Now this is a find from Amazon, and I will put a link below so that you can easily find this. I find my grid mat, which is from a long time ago, this is ancient, and also my grid paper, super helpful, but sometimes you need to take a measuring tool to the card or to the piece of ribbon and not the card down to a grid mat or paper. So this makes it easy to measure something where you need to be holding your measuring device. So this is a great little tool. The other thing I have found that I use this for is when I'm attaching my tear and tape and I want a nice clean tear. Okay, so let me show you. If I'm going, let me show you on a scrap. If I'm going to use my tear and tape on the piece of something and I literally try to tear it with my fingernails, I either don't get a good tear or it's really raggedy. So yes, it is tearable, but I don't get a nice straight edge, and I'm kind of partial, like I said, to tidy stamping. So tidy taping too, I don't know. So if I'm going to apply my tear and tape to a piece like this that's going to go onto a card or project, I like to, okay, I got to start with a straight edge because I like it tidy. So I like to lay my tape down. Then I can take that same handy little metal ruler that I showed you before, lay it right where I want my tape to tear and pull. And then I get a nice straight tear. I love this little method of tearing my tear and tape. So again, I'm just going to lay it down, bring my metal ruler right to the edge of where I want it to tear, and pull. So that has turned out to be a super helpful, handy trick for me. All right, so that's this little guy. Then I want to mention these little alcohol prep pads. Now, these are also found at Amazon, and I will put a second link down in the description so that you can get these. And these have multiple purposes. So let me show you one of them, and then we'll move on from there. One thing I will do with these, oh, let me also say, you can do the same thing with just a bottle of alcohol and a cotton ball. But I find when I'm stamping, and especially during class, I don't want the mess of an alcohol bottle and cotton ball and the potential spill. So this is much quicker and much cleaner in those applications. All right, so what you do with one of these is just tear it open and pull the little alcohol prep pad out, and you can do a couple things with this. One thing, and I was not the first one to figure this out, but it certainly has been something I've held on to. When your photopolymer stamps get well loved and well used, sometimes they get a little gritty and they don't cling as well to your block as maybe they used to. So you will not damage your photopolymer by taking an alcohol wipe to it, and you'll be shocked and amazed at how clean that will make the photopolymer. It's nice and shiny and slick again. It is not gritty. And once that has a second to dry, it will also increase how well it clings to your acrylic block. So that's great. Side note, as we know, the photopolymer stamps often do stain from certain colors of ink, and the alcohol prep will pick up a little bit more of that than your Simply Chamois. So this was a clean stamp, but as you can see, I am picking up a little bit of pink ink from it. So there is your first thing for your alcohol prep pads, making your photopolymer stamps less gritty and nice and clingy again, and also cleaning up a little bit of ink. Now, please note, you don't want to use the alcohol wipes on your cling stamps. Any of those red rubber stamps with the labels attached, do not do this. This is only for photopolymer. All right, now another application for your little pads here. I'm just gonna slide this out of the way so you can see. I just have a butcher block type desktop, and often I will get ink on it or a little bit of dried glue. I will grab one of these and just quickly go over the top of my desktop to get rid of any ink or glue. And you can see that that picked up ink and some glitter. So I will often, after I've used it for something, I will quickly hit my tabletop and clean that up as well. Okay, here's another thing you can do with these alcohol pads is you can clean your acrylic blocks. Now, I have no idea how these actually get so dirty, but they kind of get glue on them somehow. Like, you never apply glue to your blocks, but maybe just from your fingers or from setting them down, they just get dirty. So these little pads will clean these up seriously like new. So I can use it on all sides of this. My edges of this block are not too dirty, but you could see the top and the bottom were quite grimy. So this is a great way to clean your acrylic blocks. Let me bring in a second one so you can see. I'm not sure if against the black, yeah, I think you can see when I hold it just right. It's got fingerprints and sticky stuff. No, that's worse. Okay, I was just checking in your view to see. And then let me give this a scrub. I mean, there's literally some gobbed on stuff here. So I'm scrubbing right there. Now, this will also help your stamps, both photopolymer and your cling stamps, stick better to your blocks if your blocks are clean. Okay, once they get kind of dusty or grimy or little bits of glue on them, your stamps can't stick to them as well. So this is a great way to clean up your acrylic blocks. All right, now you've got your alcohol pad out and it's still got some dampness to it. So another thing that I will do, especially in preparation for a class, is I don't want my ink pads to look grimy either. You know, we are happy and excited to show our products, and to pull out an ink pad that might look grimy or inky. I'm looking for a colored one that's got some ink on it. Maybe mine are all clean. Just kidding. Okay, so like my granny apple, it's got some schmutz on it. So you can take your alcohol pad and clean those up as well, keeping your ink pads beautiful and new looking for your class. Let's clean up this memento one. Now, when I ordered these pads from Amazon, I just ordered a boatload. Okay, they came in packages. I believe the link will take you to the spot where it's 4 boxes of 100 pads each. So you get 400 of them, and they're really inexpensive, so you don't have to be stingy with them. But look at how much better my ink pad looks, and that does represent my business when I am presenting either a video or I'm doing a class and my products do not look dirty and used. So that's another use for these. All right, let's pick up a liquid glue. Now this happens to be a brand new one, so this is super clean already. So a couple things about this. You know, maybe you don't know, on the side of this there is a perforated edge so that you can easily remove the outer covering. Okay, so we get rid of that in the beginning. Now, during your classes or your stamp club, as you're passing the glue around, this little part here, which covers the white area, it's like a plastic part, gets really gross. It gets sticky, it gets grimy. And so what I have started doing is either once it starts to get dirty or even beforehand, I'll just take my paper snips and remove that little piece of plastic completely from the packaging. Now that makes this part less likely to get sticky and gluey because this plastic is gone. And bonus, if this does get some ink on it or it gets sticky, you can once again go back to your little alcohol pad and quite effectively clean this up so that it's clean and ready and nice looking before your next class. Another thing about removing that plastic sleeve is if you are using your own glue in classes and some of your students are bringing their own glue too, you don't want them to get mixed up. So if you remove that plastic, it's very easy to use a Sharpie and just label your liquid glue so that at the end of the class, you can be sure that these stay behind when people maybe take their own home that they brought. All right, so that's a tip about the glue. And then I have one more tip to show you. No, I have 2 more now that my scissors are sitting here. Another thing you can do with your pads is carefully, you can clean the tips of your scissors. Now, scissors obviously get grimy and gluey. They get adhesive on them. And even from, if you're prone to picking up your adhesive backed gems with the tip of your scissors, then it can get some adhesive residue on there too. So I'm very carefully, because the paper snips are sharp and you will cut yourself if you're not careful. So I'm carefully going along the edges here and cleaning, and you can see how much residue has come off of my scissors, which actually looked relatively clean. All right, so now my paper snips are also clean. And then my final tip of the day has to do with ribbon. I don't know how you store your ribbon, perhaps in a drawer or on some kind of a shelf. One thing that I have stopped doing is storing my ribbon where there's a dowel that goes through the center. And the reason for that is I would find that with my probably 100 ribbon spools, if they're all on the dowel and you want this one and you want to take it out for like a class or because you're going to go crafting somewhere else, you have to completely remove all the rolls from that dowel to get to this one. So no more. So all of my ribbon, I'm trying to get these going the same direction. All of my ribbon sit on a very specific type of ribbon shelf like this, where they just nest in there with no dowel. So that way I can just pull the spool out. But what happens is this, the little loose ends end up not wrapping up tight, or they end up next to each other. And then you put this one away and that little tail gets tucked behind it. It kind of ends up being a mess. So this is just a sewing trick from crafting and sewing for a long time, is when I'm done using my ribbon, I will just grab a sewing pin, and I'm not poking it into the core of the ribbon. I'm poking it actually just into the layers of the ribbon, and it will slide in quite easily. So I've got this pin going in here, and now that holds it. So when I put my ribbon onto its spot in the shelf, the tail isn't going to run free and get tangled, and it's also not going to come undone. So one more time, once I'm done using my ribbon, I just kind of wrap it up tight, take a sewing pin, tuck it into the layers of ribbon, and then it's secure. So there you have it. There are some tips and tricks for demonstrators that it doesn't hurt you to know as well. And I will be back another time when I have a handful of new tricks and tips to share with you. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.